We've looked at how we can change some of these positioning numbers over here to animate between component states. At this point, you may have wondered how to create something like a dropdown so that you can implement progressive disclosure and save a little more space on the screen. We can use those same properties of animating numbers over here in our properties panel and combined with our screen overflow to create something like a dropdown. So let's take this little design here for an expanding dropdown or accordion for plant care and turn that into a reusable component that expands when the user taps on it. I'm going to go ahead and move this stuff over here and then change the colors to white just so we can see it while we're working on it. So right now this is just an icon. It's a title for the accordion, and then it's the content of the accordion. Let's turn this into a component. Let's organize this a little bit. Think about what things can be auto layout and how to name some of these things in here so that it can be reused. So I've named this first state open. My next one is going to be closed. But first, let's add our icon and our label to a horizontal auto layout frame so that they're always very close to each other from left to right. I'm going to name this accordion label. And then this, as you might guess, I'm going to name, well, I guess I don't need to name it. You can see that this has converted this to the text content here. I'm going to go ahead and make this a property so that we can edit it when we do different instances of this. So this will be the accordion content. Actually, I'll leave this text. This is fine. But this, where it says plant care, I'm going to make this the label. So the reason for that, let me just add in an instance over here so you can see. Is so that I can really easily change all the text inside here without detaching the instance from the main component. Okay, some other things we should do here are convert these to auto layout so that the size of these text boxes expands and contracts as it needs to. So right now this is a fixed size. We want this to automatically adjust the height. So these text boxes will take up only the space they need to. The other thing we could do is add our label and our content to an auto layout frame so that they're stacking vertically. So there's our open state. Let's add a new state for closed. And let's make some changes here. So I'm going to turn on clip content on our closed state. And then each component variant is actually a frame. So I can adjust the height of that frame to hide the content underneath it. Another thing I could do is rotate this arrow to signal that this can be tapped to untwirl, and it'll just add a little bit of nice interaction in there. Now, I don't want to rotate this whole icon because you can see, because it's in a square bounding box and our label is in a horizontal auto layout, as this starts to turn, it's going to move that text, which is going to be a little bit awkward. So what I actually want to rotate is the arrow inside the bounding box. So I'm going to flip that up or actually sideways rather. And what we should have done was centered this whole thing and made sure that it was aligned to the baseline here for our label. Instead of aligning it to the top, I'm going to align it to the center of this. And I want to make sure I do that on both of them so that it's consistent. Okay. So now, if I adjust my properties, oops, this still looks like it's a little taller than it needs to be. Let's go ahead and add auto layout to that so that it hugs the contents. Now if I prototype this, I can change from close to open. It's using Smart Animate, and I can do the same from here. And then if I add this to our frame and change the color, let's go ahead and preview it. Now when I tap on this, you see that that frame expands to reveal the content. Now, this really only works, especially if you have more content on your page, which you probably will, if you're using auto layout on the entire frame. The reason being, so let me show this as an example. So right now on my iPhone 16 frame, I do not have auto layout on. If I were to have another one of these, let me just duplicate it, move it down. You see that this doesn't responsively resize. Even if this were to start as closed, and then I duplicate it and add another one underneath, when I click on this, it goes over top of the rest of the content, or underneath rather. The reason being because this second accordion doesn't move out of the way when this gets taller. The way we can fix this is by having auto layout on our parent frame. You can see that this has adjusted. Now when I click on this, everything else moves in order to make space for the content above it. Because we've made these components with properties, we can easily change our label and text. Now maybe this is cost. We can easily start to get some dynamic content in here. So you can see this is coming together as a pretty interactive prototype. It looks pretty high fidelity.